What you listening to, son?
In the last week or so, Donald Trump has actually started using Truth Social. And I know that's weird because he went several months after it launched without saying a single word on that platform. But he has decided to start using
I gotta say, this shirt that he's got on right now is really, like, fucking with me.
But I think there's a reason that Donald Trump has finally started using his own media company. And that is because they're moving into phase 2. According to a report from Rolling Stone this week, Donald Trump's, Trump Media and Technology Group, TMTG, has put out job listings looking for producers, looking for writers, because they're gonna be launching Trump TV, that's not the official name of it, but let's call it that for now, in the near future. Now think back, I've been telling you this since the beginning, which is why the failures of Truth Social have been so important. Truth Social was just the opening show, right? The opening act. That was just to get the audience warmed up. They had made it clear a year ago that not only were they doing the social media platform, they also wanted to create a conservative-friendly, anti-woke streaming service filled with MAGA-related content. And now they're moving into that phase.
Cringe.
They're hiring producers. They're looking for writers. Come out there and write us a special, write us a sitcom, I guess, featuring a MAGA family. I don't know how that's going to work out, but that's what they're doing, folks. And here's the best part of this.
It's probably either going to be the most unfunny, most disgusting, just blatantly white supremacist televised production that we've ever seen in this country's history. Or they're going to end up like unintentionally becoming parodies of themselves, and it's going to be really fucking funny. Both. It's probably going to be both. It's probably going to be both.
Much like the Daily Wire has announced, they're creating their anti-woke Disney competitor for like $100 million they're dumping into this thing.
Right.
There's no market for it.
Yeah.
Even the most ardent conservatives, the MAGA hat-wearing freaks out there, even they aren't going to sit and actually watch MAGA-friendly TV. It's going to get boring. Plus, they already have it. You already have Newsmax. You already have Fox News.
Right.
And even if you were to take every single Fox News viewer, 5 million people, and have all of those people subscribe to whatever the streaming service is that Donald Trump creates.
That was good timing, by the way, for the subscribe button right there.
These things are very expensive to do. You have to house the content. You have to pay for these entire staffs of hundreds of people for every single show that is produced. Because these are supposed to be like mini-series, little documentaries, things like that. Those take teams and teams and teams of people and very expensive equipment. So even if you pulled every viewer from Fox News to subscribe to this, it wouldn't be enough to keep it afloat. This is designed to fail. And I can't wait for that day to happen.
Neither can I. Neither can I. That'll probably be the greatest punchline out of any MAGA show that they produce. It's failure. Make television great again. And fail.
Fox host Maria Bartiromo whined about the fact that Joe Biden is now engaging in name-calling because, we wouldn't ever want a president calling people names from the White House. That's just totally unprofessional. Can't have it. Have never had it in American history, really, until Biden.
Don't we remember this, though?
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said.
But Biden's being unprofessional. Okay.
But she whined about Biden's new ultra MAGA label that he has slapped on Republicans. So here's what she said. What happens now? They're in sync in terms of name calling on the Republicans, trying to make MAGA and ultra MAGA a dirty word. Is this their new strategy? And she was interviewing Republican Senator Bill Hagerty from Tennessee, who responded, I think it's got to be the only strategy they have is deflection. The world is a more dangerous place thanks to Joe Biden. And what does he do? Blame Americans.
Oh, God.
No, he's blaming MAGA. He's blaming ultra MAGA.
Yeah.
And honestly, Maria, ultra MAGA, you really think that that's name calling of the level that Donald Trump had? You know, calling people crazy eyes, sleepy eyes, mocking that New York Times reporter for being disabled.
Yep.
We've all seen the video. We've all seen the GIF floating around social media. Donald Trump was an absolute monster with name calling. He still does it today, by the way. You know, the old broken crow, Mitch McConnell. Everybody he disagrees with is a rhino. He is literally name calling individuals. Biden came out last week and said, hey, they're not just MAGA, they're ultra MAGA. And y'all are actually wearing it like a badge of honor. You've already printed it on t-shirts and you're wearing it around.
Right.
Like, you didn't take it as an insult, so stop sitting there saying, oh, the name calling is so terrible. How are we ever going to repair our image from this? Your party doesn't care about image. All you care about is allegedly, you know, triggering the libs.
Yeah.
By labeling yourself as ultra MAGA. All you're doing is basically putting a warning label on yourself like, please don't talk to me, I'm not smart.
I don't see these people as redeemable at all. And I get the feeling that this video is going to highlight that before we get into the real meat and potatoes.
Go. I don't even want to talk to you.
I believe that Donald Trump won the election. I believe that they tried to steal the election.
Stop the Steal, a movement of Trump supporters that gained hundreds of thousands of followers online in the hours after the election, has inspired protests across the country.
The ballots that you said you saw are lying around the place or in trash cans or whatever, where are you hearing that from?
I mean, the videos are going viral everywhere. I've seen them on TikTok, I've seen them on Facebook, I've seen them on Fox News, I've seen them on the local news around my area.
I've seen too much pieces of different evidence so far that shows that at this point I would be okay with a revote.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. When you have video footage of people taking bags of ballots and showing that they are for Donald Trump and lighting them on fire.
I helped write a fact check on CNN on that particular video. The election officials said that video has been going around for a few days. They are printout ballots. They're not real ballots.
So you use the information of the election officials.
Somebody like me comes along, tries to research it, tries to fact check it, and then I fact check it. You'll come back and say, well, the election officials would say that.
But wouldn't they, though? That's the thing, though. Question everything, right?
A new piece in The Atlantic written by Jonathan Haidt perfectly describes why American political discourse becomes more and more divisive, why American politics continues to be more polarized, and why, as he writes in the headline, why the past 10 years of American life have been uniquely stupid. It's not just a phase. And so it's a lengthy piece, takes about an hour to read, but it's worth the read because I think a lot of what he writes here is true, and it's backed by various studies that he cites. He talks about how social media has played a massive role, but not necessarily social media because of what it is inherently, but rather what it has turned into over the years, how it has prioritized virality and how the desire to market oneself or build one's brand has unfortunately led to a small group of people on both sides of the political spectrum, extreme ends of the political spectrum, essentially dominating the discourse while simultaneously silencing those who want to have a more nuanced discussion about current events and politics. He writes, gradually, social media users became more adept at putting on performances and managing their personal brand, activities that might impress others, but that do not deepen friendships in the way that a private phone conversation will. So he also talks about people becoming more atomized as a result of this. Once social media platforms had trained users to spend more time performing and less time connecting, the stage was set for the major transformation, which began in 2009. The intensification of viral dynamics. And he writes about that in great detail. He gives specific examples. For instance, the way the timelines on Facebook and Twitter have changed, where you no longer see the order of posts chronologically, but the posts that have the most engagement, meaning the posts that tend to be a little more shocking, jarring, those are the ones that kind of rise to the top of the feed and dominate the discourse. He also gives the example of Twitter, for instance, adding the retweet option, Facebook adding the like and share options back in 2012. All of these elements of social media, the way that the executives have tinkered with these platforms has led to what we're experiencing today. Just a few more details before I go to you, Cenk. He talks about the dart guns of social media. Give more power to trolls and provocateurs while silencing good citizens. Research by the political scientists Alexander Bohr and Michael Bang-Peterson found that a small subset of people on social media platforms are highly concerned with gaining status and are willing to use aggression to do so. They admit that in their online discussions, they often curse, make fun of their opponents, and get blocked by other users or reported for inappropriate comments. Across 8 studies, Bohr and Peterson found that being online did not make most people more aggressive or hostile. Rather, it allowed a small number of aggressive people to attack a much larger set of victims. Even a small number of jerks were able to dominate discussion forums, Bohr and Peterson found, because non-jerks are easily turned off from online discussions of politics. And look, the consequences of this, I think, are dire because
that includes me. Let's be honest. Let's.
So first of all, accurately assessing what's happening now, Republican politicians have already caught on. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Ted Cruz, they're all in every one of these micro topics on Twitter. They're harsher and harsher, and that's because they realize that's what the algorithm rewards, and that has gotten them more and more publicity and more fundraising from the grassroots. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene, in the first quarter of Congress, as a freshman congressperson, raised more money than anyone else in Congress did. So Republicans are smart enough to figure that out. Some of them, like Ted Cruz, are actually smart. He's got other problems, but he realized it, and the way he does it is super inauthentic, and you can tell. Others are just crazy, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the algorithm rewards crazy. So she didn't do it on purpose. She just was like, Jewish space lasers. The algorithm's like, ooh, that's getting a lot of attention, okay? A lot of outrage, that's good.
Right.
And it amps it up, right?
Yeah.
She just called half the Republican Party pedophiles. That's an unbelievable, outrageous charge that pre-social media would have gotten you just demolished in politics, right?
That's true.
Right now, raising more money, more power. Why? Because that comment was outrageous, so everybody saw it. And by the way, traditional media, seeing all the likes, seeing all the shares, then thinks it's a hot topic because it's trending on Twitter. They pile on and then give extra publicity.
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
So there's no question this phenomenon is real. There's no question that it's hurt the country. Now, it's not just that though. Then as he points out, look, there's nothing stopping other countries. You don't have to get obsessed about Russia. He says basically at some point, China's gonna figure this out if they haven't already figured it out. And it is so easy to divide America. You just create more and more outrage and get people to hate each other and fight against one another, and you destroy America from within. Kind of what's happening now.
What drives them? Profits, right?
Well,
so,
look,
like,
to
all
be
this,
fair,
like, I think at this point, let me just finish my point. At this point, all of the garbage that we were sold in, the early 2000s about how, this is democratizing things and no, we're talking about extremely wealthy Silicon Valley executives who don't care about the polarization in the country. They're the ones who put this model together in the first place, not because they want to destroy the country, but because they want to make money. And what makes money for them? Selling our data, that's number one. Yeah. But number two, keeping people engaged. How do you keep people engaged on these platforms? By shock and awe, by all sorts of jarring content. And I disagree in regard to, no, things are actually better. No, they're not better now. I agree that there might be a blind spot when it comes to like mass media, but this isn't a critique of like the press. This is a critique specifically of social media platforms, and I actually do think that they've made political discourse a lot worse.
True, yeah. And unfortunately they didn't say it, but I mean, that's capitalism for you, you know? Anything to make a buck, even if that ends up resulting in disastrous division in the country, that probably, I mean, would have still been there regardless. But let's be quite frank, it probably would not be as bad right now if it didn't go down the way that it went down up until this point. You get people who are absolutely bonkers, completely divorced from reality, to a point where apparently shit like this happens.
A Florida man was arrested this past weekend for repeatedly calling 911 even after he had been told to stop calling 911.
Again, the shirt, it's currently fucking with me right now.
Saying that President Biden needed to be arrested. The man was Jacob Philbeck, a 29-year-old from Palm Harbor, Florida, who reportedly called 911 at least 3 different times within an hour, telling them, you gotta go arrest Joe Biden. But he also said, you also have to release El Chapo from prison. Release El Chapo and instead put Biden in prison. Now, the man was arrested. He was released on $150 bond. And we don't know a whole lot else, but they did say there was alcohol probably involved. So what it seems like happened is a guy got drunk, 29-year-old guy got drunk, starts calling 911, gets angry, I guess, at Biden for something, saying, you gotta arrest him. And hey, let El Chapo out while you're at it. And he just kept doing it, so of course you get arrested for abusing the 911 system. But here's what gets me about all this. I'm assuming if you're calling for President Biden's arrest, you're not on the left, right?
Right.
You're probably on the right. Why can't any of these Republicans ever give a clear, definitive answer as to why Joe Biden actually needs to be arrested, right? Why does he need to be impeached? What actual crime has he committed? That's the part they can't answer. Oh, sometimes they try to give you reasons like, well, look at the Afghanistan withdrawal. Okay, looked at it. May have been a little sloppy, but that's not illegal. Well, inflation is out of control. Sure, that's not illegal. And also, he didn't flip a magic switch and even make that happen. But the mask mandates, yeah, the ones that have been repealed, the ones that went through the legal process, also not illegal. You may not like President Biden. You may love President Biden. I don't care where you stand on it. The fact of the matter is that the man hasn't done anything illegal that we know of. It's certainly not that Republicans know of. But they're still out there every day like this nut job from South Florida calling the cops on him, calling for him to be arrested, calling for him to be impeached, saying we've got to put this man behind bars just like Anthony Fauci's got to be behind bars. Not liking somebody, not being a member of their political party, is not a reason why somebody gets arrested here in the United States. We simply don't do that.
The right's rhetoric is probably the single biggest driver of the wedge in politics. There's no critical thinking or analysis on the right. We have seen this over and over and over and over and over again. And they're the ones that keep on spreading conspiracy theories and disinformation. And then, like discussed, the algorithm, on social media will reward that. And then it gets perpetuated over and over and over again while oligarchs are profiting off of it. Because their base is now incorrectly radicalized. The only way for politicians to win re-election is to be just as incorrectly radicalized, to a point where they finally start executing plans that have been in the works for decades and become authoritarian, even on subjects they apparently don't know fucking dick about, like abortion.
Do you support the right of a woman who is just seconds away from birthing a healthy child to have an abortion?
I think that the question that you're asking does not realistically reflect abortion care.
In that scenario, would you support her right to abort that child?
I won't entertain theoreticals.
It's not a theoretical, ma'am. You're a medical doctor.
I am a medical doctor, and that has never happened.
Never happened in your practice, ma'am, but it happens. How about if a child is halfway out of the birth canal? Is an abortion permissible then?
Can you repeat your question?
If a child is halfway delivered out of the birth canal, is it permissible to have an abortion? Would you support the right for an abortion then?
I can't even fathom that ever.
I'm not asking you if you can fathom it. If it occurred, would you support that abortion or not? That's unrestricted abortion, right?
That's a question that I can't imagine. Just like you probably can't imagine what you would do if your daughter was raped.
If you found that line of questioning to be ridiculous, as Brett would say, hold on to your butts, because we're about to hear from more of these Republican lawmakers during an incredibly important hearing on abortion access. Now, this was the House Judiciary Committee, and the doctor who was being grilled on a theoretical that isn't at all part of reality is Dr. Yashika Robinson. Now, Congressman Mike Johnson from Louisiana is the one who decided to continue the GOP trend of fear-mongering about late-stage abortions and partial birth abortions. And I think we need to cut through the BS on that topic before we get to the rest of what happened during this hearing. Because the fact of the matter is, partial birth abortions for perfectly healthy babies, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, which is why the doctor there was confused by the line of questioning overall. Why are you asking me about something that doesn't happen? And the reason why it doesn't happen is because there is a literal federal ban on it happening. So let's talk about partial birth abortions, okay? The idea that, a woman gets pregnant and decides to carry a fetus for 9 months, and then as she's about to deliver, that's when she decides, after going through an uncomfortable and terrible pregnancy for 9 months, she decides, no, now I'm gonna make a decision as, I'm delivering that I want to abort the baby. And that doesn't happen. Okay, I want these guys who don't know what it's like to be a woman and don't know what it's like to carry a fetus for 9 months to understand that it doesn't happen. No woman in the country, in the world, is deciding like, I could have had that abortion in the first trimester. I could have even had it in the second trimester, depending on what state I'm in. But I'm gonna go ahead and carry this baby for 9 months. It's uncomfortable. It changes my body in some cases, terrible ways. But I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait until I'm about to deliver, and then I'm gonna order an abortion. How ridiculous is it? So let's talk about the laws. And I'm talking about federal laws. Because back in 2003, Congress, meaning on a federal level, passed a law banning partial birth abortions. Okay, partial birth abortions have been banned. And the Supreme Court actually upheld that ban in 2007. Let me give you the details. And there are exceptions to partial birth abortion bans. The 9-member US Supreme Court ruled 5-4 last week, again, this is in 2007, to ban the partial birth abortion procedure in the United States, okay? So the court upheld a federal law banning the procedure that was passed by Congress in 2003. The law had been challenged in the courts for lacking an exception to protect women's health, not just their lives. So let's understand what happened with partial birth abortion. It's fine to say I'm against partial birth abortion when we're talking about a healthy pregnancy, a healthy mother, no medical complications, nothing, right? That makes sense. Of course, what person would want to abort a baby at that late stage, a healthy baby, when the mother's life is not at risk? That doesn't happen, there's a ban. However, there are rare cases in which the woman's life is in danger. But to say that there are healthy pregnancies in this country that are aborted at the very last minute as the baby is being delivered is a lie. They are lying to you. You wanna know why they're lying to you? Because it's what they do on a regular basis, number one. But number two, they understand that an embryo, that a zygote, that a non-viable fetus is not the same as an actual baby. Okay, a viable baby is a life that can survive outside of the mother's womb. Okay, very different, in my opinion, from an embryo or a zygote or a non-viable fetus. And so what do Republicans do? They want to fearmonger. They want to paint a picture to make it appear as though like an infant is being murdered right after it gets delivered or as it's being delivered. That doesn't happen. In fact, 92.7% of abortions were performed at less, like when the woman was at less than 13 weeks gestation, okay? A smaller number of abortions, only 6.2%, were performed at 14 to 20 weeks gestation. And even fewer, meaning about 1% or less than 1%, were performed at 21 weeks gestation. And when it does happen that late in a pregnancy, it's because there is danger involved in carrying that pregnancy out, meaning that the woman's life is in danger, or there are serious abnormalities with the fetus, meaning that it is not likely to survive outside the womb.
All right, motherfuckers, let's do some goddamn math real quick. We have here, at least as recent as I've been able to find, the most recent data available to us across all these tabs. Now we have 2022, this year. The total population of the United States is 334,805,269 with a 0.57% growth rate. Now, how much of that population in percent is female? They have a slight majority over men in American society with a whole whopping 50.5%. So they are the slight majority. Let's look at abortions now. In 2019, which, like, I looked at all these other graphs, 2018, this is political administrations, 2017, but we do have this right here. 2019, there were 629,898 abortions that year. Now, to be fair, it was on a very steady decline since 2010 and dipped in 2017. Started picking back up. So we could probably just go ahead and round it off to 630,000, okay? 334,805,269 divided by 2, which is half of the United States. Wow, look at that. Oh, how interesting. Oh, wow. If we were to put that right there and this right here, what is 630,000 out of 167,402,635 in percent? Oh wow, it's literally less than 0.4%. Oh, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. You know, I find it very interesting because I remember when COVID started, the death rate was estimated to be around 0.26%, and we all took that very seriously, as we should have, and yet a lot of chuds over there at the right wing decided not to and say, oh, but it's only 0.26%, it's only 0.3%, and yet 0.37%, not much more than that, and suddenly we gotta save the children from their harlots of unsuitable whore mothers. I don't really understand how you could say this isn't serious and yet literally just a tiny bit more, like almost negligibly higher than the death rate of COVID back in 2020 right here. And suddenly this is a big deal. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think this is perfect evidence to say, fuck them kids.
But according to the GOP, you know, if you're likely to have a stillborn or if you're likely to give birth to a fetus that is not likely to survive for much longer, it doesn't matter, you still have to carry it out. It ain't up to you, it's up to guys like Congressman Mike Johnson. And if you thought—
It's up to the Lord Jesus. It's up to the Lord.
CPAC has gathered in Hungary this past week, and it's the largest that they've had this entire year. And if you're gonna do something, you gotta do it right. So as you could probably understand, they're there because they wanna celebrate and talk about what's going on with this replacement theory. We've been hearing this a lot lately, even though Tucker Carlson said he's never heard of it before. But there's a reason why they did go to Hungary for this, because their leader, Viktor Orban, is running this pro-fascist government out there, and they're like, this is a good place to do this, right?
Right.
Let's go to some of the details of what was going on, and especially since Viktor himself gave a little bit of life to this and said, hey, I welcome it. I'm thinking the same way. As a matter of fact, I have a solution. Here's some details.
This is, by the way, I believe, yeah, this is right after the Buffalo mass shooting, where the guy not only live streamed it here to Twitch, but had "here's your reparations" and the N-word written on his gun. The N-word specifically on the aiming reticle of his firearm. Okay?
I see the great European population exchange as a suicidal attempt to replace the lack of European Christian children with adults from other civilizations. Migrants is what he declared in a speech to mark the start of his fourth term in office. Echoing another popular theme on the American right, he argued that another form of cultural suicide was, quote, gender madness, a reference to the spread of LGBTQ+ rights in the West. So during this entire conference, he made it very clear that Hungary is on board for this. They love this culture war. I mean, it's a bit of a confirmation for the American right. But also, he said this: Hungary is the laboratory where we have managed to come up with the antidote for progressive dominance.
Oh.
You know, that progressive dominance we enjoy
Yeah,
here.
really? Okay.
The nation comes first. Hungary first, America first. That must have been a big applause line for them there with those Americans. So continuing on, because Matt Schlapp, leader of CPAC as well, even found a way to connect this to the way things, the way the politics have been pushing against women's rights to access to abortion as well. And you're like, how does that connection happen? Great replacement theory and lack of abortion access? This is how. This is what Schlapp said. If you're worried about this quote unquote replacement, why don't we start with allowing our own people to live? Matt Schlapp was obviously white. He asked the US media to be shut out of CPAC in Budapest, where he spoke on Thursday, because why should we want to hear what he has to say, right? Also, their master plan comes after reviewing all of his, more of his comments about this entire thing. So by scuttling Roe versus Wade, which is a quote, good start, Schlapp reportedly emphasized, and he said, referring to that Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's draft opinion, that's gonna do just that, as you can tell. So he says, if you say that there's a population problem in the country, but you're killing millions of your own people every year through legalized abortion every year, if that were to be reduced, some of that problem is solved. Weird, okay. Let's have all these, now by the way, when they say America first, we know which Americans they're talking about. Let's have these babies. In order to do that, I'm glad that Roe versus Wade is looking to be overturned so we can go ahead and populate our country with the right kinds of people. Making that connection seems like it's a stretch. Maybe no one would have predicted it. Someone here did. Watch.
And look, I think all of what we're experiencing politically in the country right now is intertwined, because which political group is taking freedom and liberty away from women by not allowing them to make medical decisions about their own bodies? It's the right wing, which, as Cenk mentioned earlier, is now dominated by this ideology where you have more than half of Republican voters believing in this nonsense conspiracy theory of white replacement. And so I think that the plan here is to purge the country, in their minds. I mean, it's a ridiculous notion, but in their minds, purge the country of anyone who's not white, and then basically force white women to reproduce, right? To bulk up the numbers of white people in America.
Hashtag Anna was right. What would be the difference? Our citizens are from all over the world. They're Latino, black, white, Jewish, Muslim, Christian. So replacing them with other Jews, Muslims, Christians, black, white, what difference would it make, right? No, they're obviously talking about white people. Okay, and because most of the immigrants coming in now are non-white. And Tucker Carlson made that very clear when he said the worst law that we ever passed was in 1965 when we stopped the law that said you could only have immigrants from Europe. So Tucker Carlson liked that, the right wing liked that, only white immigrants. And he said the worst thing that ever happened was allowing immigrants from non-white countries, non-European countries. So they're not hiding it. They're very clear about that. Oh, yeah. So Orban talks about the same thing about cultural suicide, and we don't want those other cultures here, and so that's why we have to create more babies and make sure that they do not come in here. So guys, here's one simple way to understand it. This crazy replacement theory. If they said to me, Cenk, you don't understand. You got to be in favor of the replacement theory. If they try to convince me, right? They say, I would ask them back, oh, okay, who am I getting replaced with?
Bingo.
Well, people that are just like you. Okay, what? I don't get it. Why would that be? And by the way, they're not replacing me. They're not, let's say that it's an immigrant from Mexico. I'm not going to Mexico. I'm not going anywhere else. No, they're adding to the country. They're not replacing anyone in the country. And so the question is, are they welcome or are they not welcome? And you could have different opinions on the level of immigration that we should have, but I don't see why a Latino immigrant would in any way replace anyone in America or even be a problem. The only reason it would be a problem is if you think the country should only be for white people. It's super obvious, but because the conservatives never say the two sentences together, the media has never connected it. I guarantee you that if Anna had made that point on cable news, they would have thought it was the most outrageous thing they'd ever heard. Oh, that sounds conspiratorial. But now, one of the leading Republicans and right-wingers in the country has confirmed, yeah, that's what it's about.
Dark MAGA is now a thing. So everyone's favorite fascist Republican, Madison Cawthorn, recently made an Instagram post saying that dark MAGA needs to happen. Dark MAGA is an internet meme in far-right circles which depicts Trump running again in 2024 as an open fascist and Nazi and throwing optics to the wind. We have made the case at this point in the segment that fascism is particularly on the rise because social media algorithms and the oligarchs who help make them what they are profitable, and so they keep on getting boosted, and more people end up seeing how outrageous it is, or it ends up becoming confirming right-wingers' confirmation biases, which further incorrectly radicalizes them towards fucked up ideals, which inevitably will lead to authoritarianism if it is allowed any further legitimacy. He wrote, apparently, anyone who wears glasses like that, by the way, anyone who wears sunglasses like that, just think about this image, okay? When the establishment turned their guns on me, when the Uniparty coalesced to defeat an America First member, very few people had my back. This list includes the lion's share of figures that came to my defense when it was not politically profitable. These are honorable men and women who are the type of friends anyone yearns to have. At the beginning of a change, the patriot is a rare and hated man. Okay, bro. These are those rare and hated men and women. There are other national figures who I believe are patriots, but I am on a mission now to expose those who say and promise one thing yet legislate and work towards another self-profiteering globalist agenda. We know what they're dog whistling. The time for Gentile politics, as usual, has come to an end. It's time for the rise of the new right. It's time for dark MAGA to truly take command. We have an enemy to defeat, but we will never be able to defeat them until we defeat the cowardly and weak members of our own party. Their days are numbered. We are coming.
Do not come. Do not come.
So I'm coming day and night. Coming is, as having sex with a woman and coming.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we're going to talk about Madison Cawthorn and his statement and what we can learn about information consumption while looking into his statement. Because when he said what he said, he used a term. And immediately that term became the focus of article after article after article. People trying to shape a narrative. People trying to insert that term into their own belief system, so it means what they want it to mean. And this happens a lot when there's a dynamic event that brings something new into the main political discussion or the main public consciousness. There is a habit of trying to fit it in so it doesn't disrupt the current narrative. They just want to plug it in somewhere. It would be great if there was a method of going into some dimension where that dynamic event didn't occur and then looking to find out what it meant there. And we're going to learn how to do that. It's actually really simple. You probably already know the tool exists, but you probably haven't used it.
Okay.
So first, what is Madison Cawthorn's statement? If you don't know, he lost his primary.
Good.
And he is not happy about that. So he says,
we are coming.
We are coming.
Do not come.
Coming.
So after he puts this out, dark MAGA, this new kind of MAGA, becomes a topic. And there's article after article about it. But when you read them, you can tell a lot of them are either trying to downplay what Cawthorn has said, or turn it into a joke, or accept the terminology, or dismiss it because it doesn't line up with the way they frame things. So we need to know what this term means before that narrative building started. Now, on Google and on most search engines, there's an option to filter by date. You go up to search tools or search options, you click it, and it gives you 2 dates that you can set. So one you set for a year ago, and then the other you set for the day before this dynamic event occurred, the day before Cawthorn put this out.
Okay.
And then you will eliminate all of the narrative building and you will just get the raw information. This is incredibly useful if you really want to get a handle on things before story building got involved. This is how you do it. In this case, there's a bunch of information. I will put a link to a Newsweek article about dark MAGA down below. It's from April. For those who are frequent viewers of the channel, you know how rare it is for me to actually link something. Go read it. That's what it is. If you don't want to go read it, it's fascism. That's what it is. It's using that imagery to promote that authoritarian, vengeful return of former President Trump. The goal here is to take this ideology, because they can't just call it that, rebrand it, and then insert it into normal conservative politics. That's what they're trying to do. They've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
This is just very, very mask off. I mean, understand, there's a whole lot of people who didn't want to believe that's what a lot of the Make America Great Again movement was. You had experts on political theory saying, hey, this is fascism. You had experts on political violence saying, hey, this is fascism. You had experts on fascism saying, hey, this is fascism. But the media didn't want to really call it what it was.
Exactly.
They always try to downplay it. And they may do the same thing here. The United States has a choice in this. One of the options that is being offered through political discussion right now is fascism. And I need to point out that, yeah, he lost the primary, but this is somebody who is currently a U.S. congressperson. This little technique of filtering out the results, the most recent results, is incredibly useful at times. You can go back, you can see how this meme movement developed, and it started back in January. And there have been people who've been watching it for a while and identifying what it is because of the imagery that's used in it. And basically, for some people, it's a joke. For some people, it is very much a joke. But for others, it's not. It's a method to insert this particular brand of authoritarian governance into American society. This isn't something that the media should try to downplay
At all.
because it is very open. I don't think using the terminology that they want you to use is a good idea. When you see this, just call it what it is. It's fascism.
A small fringe of Donald Trump's supporters is calling for the former president to get back on the highest stage of U.S. politics with a vengeance, with the motto, #DarkMAGA. More of a meme than a political slogan, Dark MAGA is a post-alt-right aesthetic that promotes an authoritarian version of Trump and dystopian Terminator-like images. In some, the Trump Tower is painted entirely in black, and the former president is seen piercing through the screen with blue laser eyes. The hashtag first appeared on Twitter on January 21st. Not too long after the first anniversary of January 6th, and one day after the 1 year mark of Biden's presidency, and it had become increasingly popular by March. It can now be found in thousands of memes on Telegram and TikTok as well. The aesthetics of the movement are easily recognizable. Images edited in red and black or red and blue, featuring people with blue laser eyes, often holding weapons or standing in front of neo-Nazi symbols. Dark MAGA supporters are calling for a ruthless, unforgiving version of Trump to take revenge on his political enemies at the 2024 election, though the movement hasn't been recognized or endorsed by Trump in any form. The former president hasn't yet even formally confirmed whether he'll run for president in 24 in the description of the #DarkMAGA hashtag creator. As described by the Global Network on Extremism and Technology, GNet, Dark MAGA represents Napoleon being exiled and then raising a fucking army to attack Europe, to attack the elites. Dark MAGA is the aesthetic demand that Trump embrace a harder and more focused approach to the role only he can fill. He was too kind-hearted, too forgiving. That's really crazy to think. Dark MAGA demands he learn from his mistakes, writes another Twitter user. It's the realization that there is no political solution beyond vengeance, tweets another. If you want to win, if you don't want to repeat the past, you have got to be mean. You almost have to embrace the villain role that they're bringing you with, describes another supporter, quoted by GNet. Behind the movement, there's no single identifiable group or clear ideology. Many of the messages posted by Dark MAGA supporters incite violence and contain misogynistic and or racist comments. The movement is full of early internet trolling techniques in the tradition of post-Charlottesville alt-right, which has, since the deadly Unite the Right rally in Virginia in 2017, been trying to reunify that loose coalition of white supremacists and white nationalists under the same group, said Tim Squirrel. That is a hell of a last name. Head of Communications and Editorial at the Institute of Strategic Dialogue. What we are seeing is numerous attempts to unify those factions again to some degree, he explains. Dark MAGA is, to some extent, the latest attempt to try and do that, to pull those things together and to try to unify the Trumpists and the kind of people who are more on the fringes behind this hardened image of Trump coming back as a vengeful kind of leader, having been deposed and removing all the kindness and mercy from his heart in this sort of anime arc because they're LARPers. The dark MAGA idea of this glorious leader who has been punished and sent away, deposed and humiliated, and needs to come back and harden his heart, is a narrative that wouldn't be out of place in games like Warhammer 40k or a Japanese anime. But not being able to distinguish what's ironic from what's serious in dark MAGA is exactly within the strategy of how the movement hopes to gather mainstream attention. The whole point of something like dark MAGA is that it's over the top, it's melodramatic, it's a bit ridiculous. It's Trump highlighted in red with blue laser eyes, and the bit that they are doing is to create that ridiculous aesthetic as a way of attracting attention. Dark MAGA, according to Alice E. Marwick, Associate Professor of Communication at the University of North Carolina and Principal Researcher at the Center of Information for Information, Technology, and Public Life, is an evolution of the feeling of disappointment and disenfranchisement many Trump supporters have felt after the 2020 election. There's a certain group of people who are very disappointed with the 2020 election, and there is a sense that what precipitated the attacks on the Capitol on January 6th is the idea that the election had been stolen, which it hasn't. A message that was primed by mainstream Republicans for months leading up to the election. I spend a lot of time in far-right groups online, and there's an increased sense of persecution there. There's an increased sense of urgency. There's an increased sense of anger about things like Black Lives Matter, the protests they had in 2020, COVID lockdowns, COVID restrictions. I think in many communities, there's been the cementing of ideas that the Biden regime, or the left in general, are engaging in these widespread conspiracies to sort of suppress the truth or suppress the Trump regime, suppress the opinions of conservatives, and suppress conservative action. The result of this is a very heavy victim mentality among some Trump supporters. I thought they weren't fans of the whole victimhood culture, or whatever the fuck they like to say. The general messaging that the Democrats are evil, children are under threat, people may need to take extreme acts, even political violence, to protect their children and their values, I think is consistent across the far-right spectrum. Marwick believes there's an overlap between dark MAGA and QAnon. Oh, fucking imagine that. With both groups believing that an evil democratic cabal of elites are kidnapping, sex trafficking, and murdering children, apparently to siphon adrenochrome. Now, what this does is it allows there to be this rhetoric of a reckoning where these evil people will get their comeuppance. If you're a mainstream Republican, Marwick says, your plan of action to counteract this danger will be through anti-trans, anti-LGBT bills, and when it comes to 2024, through electing the candidate who most reflects your values. But if you're somebody who's more in this extremist space, as we see with the dark MAGA hashtag, the idea is that there's a huge sense of urgency to protect children because they're literally being like kidnapped and killed by this evil group of elites, and that has to be done right now. Squirrel believes dark MAGA is trying to unite these groups under the same goals, as a way of unifying mainstream conservatives with hardline white nationalists and white supremacists. The threat of political violence posed by far-right movements like dark MAGA is real, says Marwick. But it's right now very limited, as the group doesn't have mainstream support. I think the Biden administration has been more attentive than the Trump administration to recognizing the potential violence from far-right groups. But that doesn't mean that the alt-right has disappeared. The far-right, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, the militias, the conspiracy theorists, the anti-vaxxers, they all still exist. Marwick believes that the ideas feeding the dark MAGA movement are already creating harm in American society after seeping into the mainstream political discourse. In that same mind frame of protecting children promoted by dark MAGA supporters, recent legislation like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida has been used to curtail LGTB, really? That's a fucking typo right there. And trans rights, and to restrict women's rights. While obviously the threat of political violence is always something at the forefront of people's minds, that's often just the most sensational expression of a lot of these hateful ideas. And I think what can often be the most damaging is when these hate ideas are codified into legislation, because those have the greatest impact on the greatest number of people. And when we're talking about things like LGBT families, LGBT youth, especially trans youth, we're talking about bills that actually will harm these young people. There's demonstrable harm on trans people if they're not able to get gender-affirming health care, for example. Dark MAGA was born from the alt-right's feeling of having lost power and seeking to regain that power at any cost. Dark MAGA posts are far from receiving the same kind of attention that brought similar sorts of political memes to become so relevant in the 2016 election. But in the next 2 years, things might change. So what can we say about this right now? It's like I've said before, and I'll say it again. Twitter might be Twitter. But behind every profile, well, not everyone, there's bots. But behind many a profile pic is a real person with a real phone or laptop or tablet or computer, using that vehicle as a means to express their ideas. And unfortunately, liberals don't want to fucking admit this. There are a lot more people than we care to admit who have ideas such as fucking Dark MAGA who agree with the sentiment. And I've said this before too, and I will say this again too. Before 9/11, the Twin Towers, one of the towers, was attacked. There was a van at the bottom of the building with explosives. They set off, it didn't work. About 10 years later, 9/11 happens. Right before Nazi Germany and the Holocaust and World War II, there was the modern trans today discriminatory parallel to the discrimination of Jews leading up to the fall of the Weimar Republic. And what did some people say? We'll let the fascists have their turn. It'll be our turn soon. It'll be our turn. Until it wasn't. And then January 6th. Many of us on the left said that January 6th was just the beginning, that it was not going to end there. And now we have hashtag Dark MAGA, which to some people is a joke. Sure, I'm willing to believe that. But to some people, it's a rallying cry. You have a congressperson like Madison fucking Cawthorn who said he got chills as if awe-inspired when standing in, what was it, Adolf Hitler's fucking house? Not to mention all the other far-right rhetoric that he spouted. You could chalk it up to Twitter is just Twitter, bro. Don't worry about it. Or you could think about it for longer than 2 fucking seconds and realize that these are real people expressing their real life opinions, and that seeing it through a fucking screen unfortunately might lead you to not take it as serious as you fucking should, as you would if a real fucking swastika shirt motherfucker coming up walking to you in real life, in person, saying, hey bro, Dark MAGA, it's about to happen. Get your fucking shit ready, boy. It's the same thing. Just because it's behind a fucking screen doesn't mean the threat isn't there. These are real fucking Nazis. The Fourth Reich is here. Wake up. Wake up.
I'm coming day and night.